Welcome. We're about to step inside the walls of a high-security penal psychiatry unit. This isn't just a look from the outside. We have a raw first-person account that's going to pull back the curtain on a hidden world. A world with its own rules, its own power structures, and, well, its own brutal realities.
All right, so let's just jump right in. The very first thing our source tells us is this stark piece of advice. And wow, this one sentence, it just tells you everything you need to know, doesn't it? It immediately sets the tone. We're not talking about a simple rehab facility here. This is a place about pure survival, where you have to know the system's weak spots just to get by.
So to really get a handle on this place, which our narrator calls the Blacksite, we've got to understand that it has its own, its own internal economy, and there is no better way to see how it works than by looking at the story of one inmate they call Dämon. You know, demon.
So here's how it starts. You've got this one patient, deeply disturbed, completely convinced that a couple of staff members are targeting him. I mean, he was getting in trouble all the time for his behavior, things like collecting cups of his own urine. He finally decided he'd had enough and wanted some serious payback.
So what does he do? He goes to Dämon, this guy with a reputation for being a con artist, kind of a wannabe gangster, and he makes him an offer, 2,500 euros. The job? Stab a male nurse and a female nurse. Dämon, well, he sees a golden opportunity here. He takes the deal, and more importantly, he takes the 800 euro cash down payment.
But here's the twist. This is the hustle. Dämon pockets that cash and immediately goes straight to the very staff members he was just hired to kill and snitches on the whole plot. He plays the hero, right? But he conveniently forgets to mention he took the money. The patient who hired him, his room gets raided, they find a knife, and he's immediately isolated. It's just a perfect, chilling example of the power games being played inside this Blacksite.
Okay, moving on. Our next character, his story shows us a totally different side of life in here. We're about to meet a man whose entire identity inside the Blacksite is built around one single thing, this relentless, all-consuming need to escape, and he'll do it no matter what it costs him.
And this timeline, it just lays out the whole tragic loop of his life. After just 5 years, he was this close to being released. But then, this unstoppable urge to run just took over. It kicked off a cycle of escape and recapture that's been going on for years. And now, after 2 decades, there's basically zero prospect of him ever getting out.
So how did he end up here in the first place? Well, it all started with this spree of just extreme violence, totally fueled by paranoia. You can see, the police found a small arsenal in his apartment. But the really crucial part, he actually told the narrator that back then, he genuinely believed that killing people was, a legitimate thing to do. That's the mindset we're dealing with. That's what got him locked up. Now, eventually, he earned the privilege of escorted trips to the outside. And what does he do with that freedom? He becomes the ward's main dealer. Our source lays out his methods pretty clearly. Remember the drugs in the underwear to get past searches? Yeah, that. For alcohol, he'd clean out a shower gel bottle and fill it with vodka, or even fill condoms with vodka and hide them. He wasn't just fueling his own addiction, he was supplying the entire ward.
And you can see this grim pattern start to form. Every single time he got a taste of freedom, it ended the exact same way. He'd run, go on a massive drug and alcohol binge, and when the money inevitably ran out, he'd turn to crime, to robbery. His escapes were never well planned. They were always frantic, desperate, and, they never lasted long.
So on one of his escapes, this one actually lasted a bit longer. His desperation just hit a breaking point. He was out of cash, so he decided to rob a local kebab shop with a gas pistol. He actually managed to get away with about 800 euros, but his time on the run was about to come to a really, really violent end. Literally, as he's walking out the door, an off-duty cop grabs him, and then the 5 guys working in the shop, they all rush out to help, but 2 of them are armed with those huge shark knives they used to carve the donor meat. They beat him to the ground and, the narrator's account is pretty graphic. They stabbed him in the back 4 times. Of course, he ended up right back in the Blacksite, this time with some permanent scars to remember it by. Okay, let's shift gears. We're going to turn to what might be the most complex and, according to our source, the most dangerous person in this whole story. A man named Assad. He's described as handsome, highly intelligent, a talented classical musician, and an absolute master of manipulation.
And as you can see, Assad is not your typical patient here. He comes from a good family, educated, middle class. He's a skilled violinist. He just knows how to charm people. The narrator is convinced that his good looks and charisma, especially with the female psychologists, let him get special treatment,
getting privileges way faster than anybody else.
This is where it gets really unsettling. The narrator draws a direct line, a really chilling parallel, frankly, between Assadin and Charles Manson. Think about it. Both guys had these grand, revolutionary fantasies. Both used LSD. Both surrounded themselves with women. But here's the key difference. Manson sent his followers out to do the killing. Assadin, well, he decided to handle things himself.
So what pushed him over the edge? What actually led to his crime? The narrator basically lays out a recipe for psychosis, and it's a seriously bizarre mix. It starts with months of microdosing LSD, then a comment from his ex-wife that he completely misinterprets, add in a song by Diane Ward playing on a loop, a news story that stuck with him, and top it all off with an obsession with the number 44 and a belief that he was Jesus reincarnated. What a combination.
And this was the specific lyric. It's from a song by the group Die Antwoord. According to our source, Assadin played this one line over and over and over again. He basically turned a piece of music into the personal soundtrack for his plan to violently attack his ex-wife.
This is what's so fascinating, right? It shows the complete contradiction that is Assadin. On the one hand, he's capable of this extreme, fantasy-fueled violence. On the other, he's incredibly logical and meticulous. He and the narrator actually planned this detailed, non-violent escape. Assadin even had a second passport, a Spanish one. Their plan was to use a global meditation organization as a cover for him to just disappear into South America. And you know what? It sounds like it could have actually worked.
But that quiet, calculated escape plan, that was just on paper. That was the theory. The reality of how Assadin actually left the Blacksite, well, it was the complete opposite. It was loud, it was chaotic, and it was incredibly violent.
Before we get into the details of what happened, it's really important to understand what this place is officially. The German term is Maßregelvollzug, and that means it's technically not a prison, it's a secure hospital for mentally ill offenders. That distinction is going to be really key when we look at the official report of what went down.
Okay, so for a moment, let's step away from the personal inside story. Let's look at the cold, hard facts from the outside world. This is what came out in a joint press release from the Berlin police on, of all days, Christmas Eve 2023.
And the report is just as clinical as you'd expect. At 3:30 in the morning, the 34-year-old patient, who we know as Assadin, lured a nurse into his room. He attacked her with a pan. When another nurse ran in to help, he attacked that nurse with a knife. Then he and another inmate were just gone. That whole meticulous plan to slip away to South America, out the window, replaced with pure brute force.
And this is the final official word from the hospital. All that complexity, the charisma, the backstory, the music, it's all stripped away. In the end, what you're left with is a simple, stark warning to the public. These men are considered dangerous. Which leaves us with this final thought. On one hand, you have the intimate, detailed, and, yes, subjective story from inside the walls, and on the other, you have the sterile, objective, just the facts report from the outside. They're describing the exact same people and the exact same events, but they feel like they're from two different universes. So when you're faced with both, how do you even begin to figure out what's real?